Good morning, Happy Valley, and welcome back to another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast. I'm your host, Richie and as always, when we're talking team stuff, recruiting stuff too, I guess, joined by my co-host, Dylan Callahan-Crawley. But Dylan, we got some interesting news yesterday as Matt Zollers decided to commit to Missouri over Penn State and Georgia as the three finalists, I would say. I know it was technically a top four, top five, whatever it was. But
Penn State finished third.
Those were the three schools. But before we get to that, real quick word from our sponsor, SeatGeek. If you guys don't know, SeatGeek's an amazing app. It helps you buy tickets. It's the most downloaded ticket distribution app on the market. They have events. They have tickets to events such as concerts, football games, basketball games, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They have tickets to just about anything. Use SeatGeek today, and if you download today and make a new account, use the promo code Penn State Rivals. You'll get $20 off your order. That is Penn State Rivals, one full word, all together, all caps, and you'll get $20 off your order, off your first purchase only. If you've already used that first purchase, just make a new email, make a new account, and then you can get that $20 again. But anyway, going back to the recruiting side of things for Penn State, Matt Zollers, in-state quarterback, the top in-state quarterback in the 2025 class. What happened there? Just kind of break down what happened and why he's going to Missouri and not Penn State.
Yeah, so I think there's multiple reasons here, really. One, we know that money wasn't going to be the end-all, be-all in this one, obviously, but NIL is still important in recruitment these days, obviously. We know that Missouri made a really big offer to Zollers. We've both heard seven figures. We've heard up to like the 2 million range. I don't know how true that one is, but I have heard enough of seven figures from people that I'm quite confident that it was in that 7-figure range. I just don't know the exact amount. So there was that was up there. Again, he said that it wasn't going to be a huge factor for him. NIL, that is. Beyond that, Penn State has a quarterback committed at Beckham Kritz already. But they also have, another really good young quarterback on the roster right now, Nathan Grunkmeyer, who, could be the next in line to be the starting quarterback for the Nittany Lions after Drew eventually, leaves for the NFL, one would assume, perhaps even as soon as next year. And I wrote yesterday on Happy Valley Insider, PennState.Rivals.com, about where Penn State goes from here, the tough decisions that have to be made. And one of them really is after Zollers, do they pursue a second quarterback still because of what Grunkmeyer has shown already in his first spring with the program? How do they think he's going to continue to develop? Do they think he could be ready as soon as next year? Now, obviously, taking a second quarterback probably doesn't change next year, but if you think he can be ready as soon as next year, then you're talking about a kid who can start for 2-3 years, depending on how things go for your program, and that's going to make it harder for you to get a second quarterback, especially when you already have one committed. So I think both having Kritz committed, but also having Ethan Grunkmeyer already on campus, looking really good this spring. Perhaps that, Missouri has a little bit of an easier avenue to early playing time if you're Matt Zollers, which I'm not going to dog any kid for, finding a path to playing time, especially at the quarterback position. He's a very, very talented quarterback. He can compete for that job as, I don't know, a freshman, but as a redshirt freshman or true sophomore. What year is Brady cooking? Is Brady cook?
That's a good question, actually. I can try to find it out real quick.
Sure. But you look at Penn State, you look at Georgia. Georgia has a very good quarterback room. That would have been a tough one to, get. Even if you ball out in practice, it's going to be tough to earn that starting job. And not to mention,
go on. He will be a senior this year, this upcoming year.
So yeah, this is last year.
Yeah, and then he'll be out. So by the time Zollers is there, it's a wide open competition next year.
Right, and he's going to enroll in the spring.
I should say.
So he's going to enroll in the spring. He'll have an opportunity to compete right away for that starting job. At Georgia, it would have been tough. Plus, Georgia just took a commitment from Jared Curtis, 2026 quarterback, one of the best in the country. And I know Georgia told him that they were going to only take one quarterback this class, and he was their target right now. But I also have a hard time believing that if Juju Lewis came around later in the cycle and said, "Hey, I want to be a Bulldog," that Georgia would turn down a caliber of quarterback like Juju Lewis.
There's also some rumors with Georgia and Curtis that he could potentially reclass up.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on that. So now that Zollers is out for them, it's just, hey, maybe Curtis just comes a year early and just flip-flop, and there you go.
Yeah. So I think that is a big thing is and this is just personal opinion. This based off what I've heard. I think that was quite a big thing. I think NIL played a factor, not the biggest factor, but played a factor. You can. I like to think you can say all you want. Money isn't a factor, and it may not be a factor, but when you have potentially 7 figures being thrown at you, that's even for kids who come from wealthy families. I mean, 7 figures is nothing to scoff at.
No, not at all. I'm
not sure of his financial background, but just in general, even for kids from wealthy families, that's hard to turn down.
Yeah, I said it before on our message board, I should say, in the Lions Den forum. Like Kerry Booth, for example, for basketball, entered the portal, and everyone's like, why would he enter? He was like playing really good minutes for Notre Dame. He was like almost a starter at some, or he was a starter for some games. And I'm like, dude, even though his dad is Calvin Booth, the GM of the Denver Nuggets, the man still wants a payday. Like, everyone wants a payday. It doesn't matter how much money you have. You always want more. That's just how it works.
Exactly. Again, not the biggest factor, but a factor. And then I think, he sees what Eli Drinkowitz has done in Missouri, what Kirby Moore has done in Missouri last year, and he likes the direction of that program. Now, if Missouri has a really good season offensively again, I don't know if Kirby Moore is going to be there next year.
True.
But Eli Drinkowitz at least has a pretty strong track record of success in his coaching career. Not that James Franklin doesn't have that, but let's be honest here. Andy Koltanicki is now offensive coordinator. Top of my head, I think this is 6. Donovan, Moorhead, Ronnie. I guess 5. Ronnie, Yursich, and now Koltanicki. That's 5 offensive coordinators in 12 years. And not all of them left because of getting bigger and better jobs. 2 of them were straight up fired. So it's not exactly 2 out of the 4 that have left were fired. So that I think plays a factor. There hasn't been stability at that offense coordinator position, which I think it's okay if it's due to success, but when it's not due to success, it's a little bit of a worry. And with usually, with a change in at offense coordinator, usually comes a change at quarterbacks coach. What is Penn State going to do with the coaching staff going forward? Because I believe while he is the quarterbacks coach technically right now, I believe Danny O'Brien is still technically a graduate assistant, in which they'll have to find a roster spot for in the near future. A roster spot, a coaching staff spot for in the near future.
Well, let's be honest. Like, this coaching staff isn't going to stay together forever. I think eventually you'll see a guy like Sider move on. If he can't get the OC job, I think you'll see a guy like Ty Howell potentially move on and get an OC job somewhere. And I think looking way too far ahead, Ty Howell leaves. Andy Koltanicki has a lot of experience with tight ends. It makes a lot of sense to just give him OC/tight ends and then promote Danny O'Brien to full-time quarterback coach or whatever. But that's looking way too far down the line. Now, sticking with quarterback talk, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks uncommitted that hold Penn State offers currently. There hasn't been a new offer sent out since Koltanicki got the job. They've only hosted one of those 6 since Koltanicki got the job, and that's Malik Washington. Are we just assuming he's the next man up, and do they push?
I would say to the first question, if it's not him, I'm not really sure who would be right now. Just because we haven't heard a lot about those other 5 quarterbacks, like you said. Yeah, Washington's the only one who's visited. I think Washington has some pretty high upside. I think he has maybe a little less than Zollers, but I still think he has pretty high upside overall. And he would be a very good addition to the class. But I think Penn State is going to have to kind of evaluate their quarterback board, evaluate what's left in region, out of region, and go from there. And that's going to ultimately decide if they want to pursue Washington. But also, the second part of this is, even if they want to pursue Washington, is there hard feelings on Washington's side towards Penn State? Washington this time last year was Penn State's top 2025 quarterback target. He was the top 2025 quarterback target all the way up until maybe October, November, when Zollers got offered. And then Zollers gets offered, and he becomes the number one guy. They take Crit, says Zollers remains the top guy. And obviously they missed on Zollers. Ron Montgomery is another name they were high on, who has since eliminated Penn State from his. And it seems like Penn State's fine with that, based off what we've known and talked about in the past as well, which leaves Washington or a lot of question marks. And if they don't pursue Washington, I think they may just decide to use that scholarship elsewhere. Because, like I said, you do have Ethan Grunkmeyer, a true freshman on campus right now, really impressed in his first spring with the program. Could be making an impact as early as next year, perhaps, if Drew does leave after the 2024 season. That is going to be something that's interesting to watch in itself going forward as well. Drew has this season, maybe 2 more seasons as the starting quarterback. How would that affect, a Bo Pereira? How would that affect the Jackson Smolik? That's another thing to consider here. Jackson Smolik just suffered some sort of, I would say, rather serious injury since he's out indefinitely. He's out for the rest of the spring.
I'd be shocked if he even suited up this fall, to be honest.
Yeah, his availability for the fall is still unclear, but it sounds right now that this was not, just a banged up for the rest of spring type thing. This is going to be something that we have to watch going forward. That's not inside information. That's more so just my reading between the lines here. But even with Jackson if Jackson Smolik's healthy, if Drew returns for a third-year starting quarterback in 2025, does Jackson look elsewhere? Does Bo look elsewhere? I know we've talked a lot about Bo, being a Penn State kid, grew up a Penn State fan, but at some point or another, if he wants to be a starting quarterback, that may not happen at Penn State, and he'll have to face that truth potentially down the road.
I think he personally leaves if he doesn't get if Drew Allar stays for another year. I think he's probably out.
Yeah, so if he stays for 2025, I think that would. I would not be shocked if that was the development that occurs.
I think he's good enough that he could start at multiple Power 5 teams. I don't think there's a question about it.
Yeah, I know there's some questions about his passing abilities, but I think he has enough dual threat ability, enough athleticism in his game that he would be able to make it work at some sort of Power 5.
Yeah. Schools would love to have him, I'm sure. But
right.
Going through the other names on the list real quick, just because I'll just list them off for people. Yeah. Cameron Boykin visited back in November. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong guy. Cameron Boykin did visit, but he doesn't have an offer. Sebastian Serco offer was at Lash Bash last year. Really hasn't heard from Penn State since. Florida kid. Antoine Hill, one of the top kids in the country, former Colorado commit. Never visited Penn State, but did have a Penn State offer. Did decommit from Colorado back in November. I don't know where he's actually going to end up. Royce Thomas Jenkins, Texas kid, had earned an offer back in April 2023.
Yeah.
Don't really expect him to end up at Penn State because, number one, he's just whatever. TJ Lateef, I believe, earned an offer relatively recently in 2024, but this was before Colton Nicky, and it sounds like he's all but guaranteed to go to Nebraska. California kid. Keep an eye on that one. I still don't think he's going to end up at Penn State either way. Ryan Montgomery, you mentioned, eliminated Penn State, probably Florida, South Carolina there.
Yep.
And then Malik Washington. And it's really Malik, and that's it at the moment. I know I keep saying David McCombs kid because he has the Colton Nicky connection. He did commit to Colton Nicky at Kansas, but I think they could flip him if they want to. But again, do you really need a quarterback when you have Beckham Kritz already? Do you want a quarterback? Are you going to have 5 scholarship quarterbacks next year? That's insane.
And And Kritz's development going forward is another thing to consider if they're going to pursue a second quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
How confident are they in Kritz in getting to where he needs to be? He's a kid who's moved around 4, 5, 6 times in his high school career already, and I also wonder. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. I also wonder just with that much transferring, is there going to be potential? And I don't know how it was. I think there are similar conversations, I should say, with, I believe, T.A. Cunningham. But with moving around that much, is everything going to be okay credit-wise for Penn State from a academic side of things?
Yeah.
Because that's just a lot of transfer. That's a lot of transferring of credits, all that. Penn State under James Franklin has had a notoriously tough time at times of getting kids in, even when grades are fine. But whether for transfers, especially credits or this and that and all that type of thing. So I just wonder if there's going to be any issues that pop up with that for Penn State's sake. Hopefully not. But there's just a lot to consider with Kritz just because he hasn't played a lot of football and he hasn't been in one offense for more than like 3 months. It's his development and how they feel about him going forward is going to be something I think to watch as well.
Well, you know what? They got T.A. Cunningham in somehow, and
Sure.
I think they'll be able to get back to Kritz in. I think that's a big reason why he's going to Miami Central, same school that T.A. was at before. I don't even know what the hell T.A. did. He went to like 3 different schools, ended up at Georgia somehow. But yeah, I'm pretty confident they'll be able to get him in. There's a reason he's there, and there's a reason Keandre Parker's there as well. So I think it's going to help them at least get him to campus. What they do after that, no one knows. But moving on a little bit, talking from other recruiting positions, I want to talk about wide receiver.
Yeah.
Because Michael Thomas was on campus last week. But it sounds like he's not a take, although he's a very highly ranked kid for most sites, at least, not for us.
Right.
So he's not a take. So now where do they kind of stand with wide receiver recruiting? We know Quincy Porter was also on campus. Is there a shot there? And where do they kind of go? Because right now I think it's only a lyric, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's only Lurk right now. Quincy Porter, I think, still remains a long shot, for lack of a better word. But they're as of right now still alive in that recruitment. They were for a long time as well, worth noting, in on Quinnell Farrakhan Jr. Out of Houston. But this time last year, it looked like he was going to commit to them alongside Keandre Barker, and that never happened. And now he's actually now focusing, I believe, on Alabama, Nebraska, and Texas A&M.
I feel like we could argue that one for the better.
Yeah. So he's gone out of the potential list, which leaves still a good amount of guys, but the ones I'll be watching going forward: Jeff Exiner, who we've talked about a lot; Lex Cyrus, who we've talked about a lot; Nayshawn Montgomery out of Miami, Florida, teammates of Keandre Barker, and Beckham Kritza. He'll be somebody to watch. There's Kalik Lockett, somebody to keep an eye on. Desi Jones is off the board, Ohio State. Phillip Bell out of California will be making an official visit. So there's still quite a few guys out there that are notable prospects that Penn State is in the race for here. And I think they're going to land. I think they're probably going to take 4 wide receivers this class is what I would guess right now, 3 or 4. If they really like a couple of them, maybe 5, but I would say 4 is probably a safe number. So, I mean, I feel good about Exiner. I feel good about Cyrus. So with Jeff Exiner, Michigan State, they just make a really good push on an unofficial visit. So we'll see what happens there. Like Cyrus, though, we still feel good about there. So there's still quite a few guys out there worth, consideration. And I wouldn't press to worry about it. Samari Reed, another one.
Yeah, you said 4 projected right now. They have 1 committed. You said Exiner probably more than likely. I think we actually have a future cast for Exiner.
We do.
Future cast for Lex Cyrus. So that's 3. Who's this 4th guy? if you had to guess right now?
I think they are really a true contender for Nashon Montgomery.
Okay.
Beyond him,
I think he's on campus June 21st for an official.
Beyond
Yes,
him,
correct.
it does get a little bit tougher just because there's a bunch of guys that they are in the race for, but there's not like a clear leader for either at this point in time.
Okay.
Gotcha. But I really do think they are a true contender for Nashon Montgomery, which would be a fantastic pickup.
Kind of sticking with receivers, sticking with the offense at the very least. Tight end. Now they're hosting Nate Roberts on May 31st. Do they have a shot there, number one? Number two, we have a future cast for Andrew Olish. He's dropping a top 80, just announced. I know we have a future cast in for Penn State, in favor of Penn State, but is that going to stick? And then I guess the third thing is Brody, I forget his last name, someone with an L. Brody Lennon, yes, from Ohio, just came to campus, and it sounds like he's super high on Penn State. Do they take two tight ends this cycle again, or do they just stick with one? And if it is that one, is it any of those three?
I think unless
very wide open question for you.
Yeah, I think unless they think I think they take right now one tight end just because that room is stacked. Though perhaps if multiple guys leave unexpectedly, because you're going to lose Tyler Warren already to the NFL. I think
Khalil stay. Does Khalil have another year?
Yes, he has another year. But if you're Khalil Dinkins, do you think? I think Khalil likely stays into next spring. But if Khalil doesn't win the starting job, perhaps, or he sees that an Andrew Rappelier or a Luke Reynolds is potentially taking that starting job next year, if he doesn't win it, does he choose to look elsewhere? That's something I think to consider. They could lose multiple guys in that room. I wouldn't be
Jerry Cross stay.
Oh, Jerry Cross, no one. So yesterday in my article, I did projections on just like if they took 25, what would the class look like? Right now, I have one tight end, but I don't think two tight ends is out of the question, especially because there are multiple tight ends that are really high up. Going to Nate Roberts, they are hosting him for an official visit. I don't think they're the leader right now. Last time I checked, I think that was Ohio State potentially leading for him. That's been a really crazy recruit. You can argue Penn State was maybe a leader for a hot minute way back, but then Notre Dame was the leader. Then Oklahoma was the leader. Then Ohio State was the leader. So who knows where that recruitment's going to go? But right now, I don't think Penn State would land his commitment, but they're in the race. Brody Lennon is definitely somebody to watch. He has an official visit, I'm told, for the June 21st weekend. Which definitely, it makes him a name worth knowing. He really is high on Penn State. Really likes what they've done with the tight end position in the past. So he's definitely somebody worth watching.
Decent offer list too. Some SEC schools, Big Ten.
I know Kentucky is very high on him as well.
Yeah, the day before Penn State, it looks like. Also, Pitt has an official visit with him as well too. Interesting to see where he goes.
You asked about Andrew Olish. Yes, we have the future casting for Andrew Olish. Right now, I still feel like Penn State has a very good chance to land Olish. They've hosted him like a dozen times in this recruitment already.
Yeah,
he's going to take an official visit. But am I as confident as I was when we placed that future cast on, let's see the date, January 20th? No, I'm not as confident, but I still feel like Penn State is the leader in the clubhouse in that one. But yeah, there's no denying it. He's blown up. He's received offers from every major school in the country. He's taken visits everywhere throughout the country. It's not going to be as easy of a race to win as it was in January. But I still like what they said there. Other guys to remember at that position, Luka Gilbert out of Ohio.
Hayden Bradley. I completely
Hayden Bradley out of Georgia.
He'll be on
definitely.
campus 21st as well, so maybe they do take two.
He's definitely one to remember. Lincoln Cure I mentioned last time. They seem to have lost some momentum in that one. He still may take an official visit, but I I still think he's all Kansas State eventually.
Mm.
But yeah, you mentioned. Now I'm blanking on his name.
Hayden
Hayden
Bradley.
Bradley.
Yeah.
And then there's also, there's Jaden Savory, who I think is a little further down the board, but another name worth mention in this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Other than that, I guess we talked wide receiver, talked tight end. Do we really see the next commitment anywhere? I'm trying to look along the list. Maybe Cyrus, if they push him a little.
If Cyrus is visiting for the blue-white game, that would pique my interest. But
Mm-hmm.
right now, it is kind of hard to look at the list and be like, "Oh, that's the next guy." Listen, I wouldn't be shocked if they end up with a commitment or two during blue-white weekend, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a hard time right now sitting and pointing out exactly who that could be. There's a couple guys who I wouldn't be surprised about, but there's nobody on that board that really jumps out to me either right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up the blue white list right now. I like Carter Scruggs a lot. I feel like he likes Penn State a lot, and I feel like that one could end relatively early. I know we're talking 2025, but a 2026 kid that could potentially come in early.
Yeah, he could end up committing early no matter where it ultimately ends up being. But Penn State is doing a really good job early on there.
Yeah. All right. For football recruiting, I think that's really anything else before we switch to a little hoops talk.
We didn't mention at the top, but right before we came on, we did have a little bit of an earthquake here, so that was a fun experience.
That was something.
A little bit more for you than me.
Yeah, I was probably about 20 miles from where it actually originated, so that was kind of insane. I just was like, whoa! I thought like someone's washer like above me was just going really nuts and absolutely crazy. But yeah, no. So kind of talk a little bit about hoops. We reported it yesterday on our message board. It sounds very promising that Ace Baldwin will be returning to Penn State after all. We were previously reported that, and it wasn't just us in this, just to be fair. Shirley Donovan, who's been phenomenal with all the hoop stuff, actually, I think first reported it, that they were kind of going to go away from each other. It sounded like Ace was going to enter the portal, go get his bag, and that was it. But that is not going to happen. It sounds like Penn State is able to put together a nice little package to convince him to stay. So there is some NIL money in hoops after all. So everyone relax. But yeah, no, that's huge to get the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year back. I know it's not official yet, but it also sounds like Penn State is pursuing some other guys in the transfer. I know they had a big man on campus earlier this week in Yannick Nauser, something like that. Northern Illinois, 6'11" forward. He started from Northern Illinois, so he's pretty decent.
Yep.
They got Kaji Nessa, who we did a whole podcast on recently. He'll probably be the backup big man, it seems like. Fill that Demetrius Lilly / Wahab / Favor Air type role. I don't expect him to play significant minutes, but good get. I don't think there's anything really else in terms of hoops right now. It's quiet because it's a dead period. Final Four's and active, and it's the coaches' convention as well. So, all those guys are sitting there drinking together as they're also plucking each other's players behind their back.
Yeah, it's definitely a quiet time right now. I mean, it's good that Ace is returning. Ace is returning. I know I said last time that I'm having a hard time seeing them take a big step forward in 2025, and I guess that defined big. I don't think this is going to be a tournament team necessarily next year. I think you probably feel the same way. But if Ace returns, that does make me feel that there is an avenue for this team to, like, do you think an NIT appearance could be in the cards for next year?
I think it's possible. The Big Ten is going to be interesting next season. So now, like, some teams like Purdue's losing a lot.
Yeah.
I think they could win it all this year still, but I think they lose a lot. They're going to lose Edey. They're going to lose Braden Smith. They're going to lose Jones. They're going to lose a lot of guys. So how are they going to bounce back?
Right.
Is Michigan State just middle of the pack now? Or are they not, like, because they made it to the tournament, but then they fell flat in their face as well.
Yeah.
The rest of the Big Ten's interesting too. Like Rutgers is bringing the number 2 recruiting class in the country with number 2 and number 3 recruits in the country. So do they just automatically shoot to the top? Minnesota lost some dudes. It sounds like they're having some NIL issues. I'm trying to think who else. Indiana's a mess. Michigan's a mess.
Yeah.
But Michigan might be adding some quality FAU transfers. So it's
Right.
It's a real crapshoot in the Big Ten, and it always is, and it's going to be like that every year, I feel like.
Yeah, and I mean, you also now have maybe not next year, but one of the more interesting teams to watch in the Big Ten going forward is going to be USC, who
I forgot some new faces too.
just hired Eric Musselman and actually brought with him Joshua Cohen, who was a Penn State transfer portal target, who committed to Arkansas originally last week and now has flipped to USC with Musselman. I think on paper, maybe the team that Penn State, if they're going to make an NIT run, it's going to be similar to, or more, perhaps they make a bit bigger run. Minnesota from this year. Minnesota last year in 2022-23, terrible. 9-22, 2-17 in conference. This year they turn around to 19 and I think 18-15 before the NIT tournament, and 9-11 in conference play. That being said, I don't know how much people watch the Minnesota outside their meetings with Penn State this year, but Minnesota did have Dawson Garcia, which let's say that's their ace Baldwin, but they also had Cam Christie, Mike Mitchell, and Farrell Payne all average over 10 points per game this year. Does Penn State have 4-5 guys next year that they think they can trust to be reliable double-digit scorers game in and game out? I think that's where I think there's questions for me is that I just have a hard time finding the offense for this team next year.
They had a hard time finding offense this year too.
Especially, you get Ace back, but Kanye is gone.
Yeah,
we know that he's been gone. Cudis is gone. He averaged 9.8 points. You get Hicks and Kearns back, but neither one was. Both were good, but not great this year. So I just don't know where the scoring will come from next year, which is my biggest hang up for them right now. That's honestly, I think, what they're going to have to try to answer here in the transfer portal.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be definitely interesting. Maybe Hicks takes a jump. Maybe Kern takes another jump.
You'll need a Hicks. You'll need a Kern, a Dunn.
Dunn needs to step up a little more.
A Puff Johnson to take a step up.
Especially
you need those.
Dunn and Johnson. They're just ranked so highly out of high school. Like the potential's there. You just got to unlock it a little bit. Maybe just that final year, that might be it. And it might just click. And
outside of Baldwin, you need that entire senior group for next year to step up their game if you're going to take a step forward.
100%.
So that'll be the question that ultimately has to be answered this offseason for Mike Rhodes. And looking at their defensive ratings this year, their top two defensive big men are gone, and here's Wahab and Demetrius Lillard. So that's something else to watch. This is going to be a program that's built around a suffocating defense. It was not that this year. They allowed 73.4 points per game, 232nd in the country, and now you're losing your two best defensive forwards. So it's going to be there's still a lot of work to be done here.
Yeah, that's for sure. But that's all we really got. Any final thoughts before we sign off on this one?
I have no final thoughts. No.
Okay. It's simple enough.
Yeah, I was trying to think about anything, kind of in the bottom there. I'm trying to think, but no. I got nothing. I guess worth noting, Malachi Goodman, priority offensive line prospect going forward for Penn State. Going to be on campus in Nebraska today. Nebraska, we haven't talked about it a ton, but worth mentioning quickly, is really prioritizing New Jersey under Matt Rule. So they could end up being a little bit of a pain in the butt for Penn State going forward. But Malachi Goodman's definitely something to watch. That's something that just came across my Twitter feed. So.
Yep. So, all right, cool. So for me and Dylan, that's another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast. Signing off.